vaccination.
The big story on 105.9 The Region.
And the big story, and is it a turning point? Have we gone too far? Quebec Premier François Legault said today the province would be imposing a health tax on Quebecers who refuse to get their first dose of COVID-19 vaccine in the coming weeks. And so it makes me a little uneasy. Couple that with the fact that last week we reported that the city of Toronto was firing people who did not get vaccinated. It makes me a little uneasy, forcing people to put something into their bodies, but it's not without precedent. We've done it with other vaccines in the past years. In fact, Ontario parents are liable for fines of up to $1,000 if their kids are not vaccinated against the measles. But smokers, they're a burden on our healthcare system, are not fined with that, but they are taxed. I mean, they are taxed a lot. So it's definitely something, it makes me uneasy, but it turns out to be a bit of a gray area. Jacob Serebrin is a reporter with the Canadian Press and joins me now from Montreal. Jacob, was Premier Legault's announcement a surprise, or did we see this coming?
No, we really didn't. This kind of came out of the blue. I don't think there was any expectation that this was coming. I hadn't seen any. Sometimes things will leak out from the Premier's office. I hadn't seen any leaks of that nature. It was really seemed to catch everyone off guard.
What is the reaction, the initial reaction been? First of all, from the government side, from the opposition side, and from special interest groups?
Well, it's pretty early to say what the reaction has been. I think everyone was really, earlier today reacting to the fact that our public health director here in Quebec, Dr. Horacio Arruda, had resigned somewhat without warning. There had been calls for his resignation. The hashtag #FireArruda had trended on Twitter a few times. So I think that was sort of what everyone was focused on today. Certainly the Quebec government has said they planned to expand the vaccine passport system, but there hadn't been any talk yet of this financial penalty for people who refuse to get vaccinated.
We got to stop calling it a financial penalty. It's a fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could characterize it that way.
I mean, a government would want to spin it that this is a financial penalty. But no, this is a fine for not putting a needle in your arm.
Yeah, it would be paid to your income taxes. It would be, we don't know how much it'll be, but more than $100 is for sure. François Legault said he didn't think that would be significant enough.
Tell me a little bit about the mood in Quebec right now. I mean, for instance, here in Ontario, the mood is very tense as far as open the schools, close the schools, fire employees for not getting vaccinated. What's the feeling in Quebec?
Well, I think what you were saying just a second there, Kevin, about the open the schools, close the schools, we're hearing really polarized opinions on that subject here. The schools are scheduled to reopen on January 17th. There's a lot of doctors, pediatricians saying the schools should reopen on January 17th, that children are, they need to be in school, that it's good for their mental health. Well, we've got the teachers' unions and some parents' groups on the other side saying they're worried about transmission in schools, and they're worried about teachers getting sick, about kids bringing it home, about kids themselves getting sick. So we do have that debate. Obviously, here in Quebec, we're under a curfew, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., and well, I don't know sort of what the real, just how much the general public, how people really feel about it, but I do have the sense that people are less tolerant of the curfew this time than they were last year. It does seem like there's less, and I know the government recently did a survey which suggests there's less adhesion to some of the public health rules, that people are frustrated, they're tired, they're sort of, I think we're all, we all want to be done with this. I think that's fair to say.
Definitely.
And so it is a tough time right now, and we are under these sort of heavy restrictions here in Quebec. Restaurants are closed, the dining rooms, bars are closed. So it is, it feels in some ways like it did a year ago, and I think people are a little less tolerant of feeling like a year ago now.
Yeah. And it's a very similar to the feeling in Ontario. And I think this latest move of a fine for not complying is going to do very little to bring people together and just will divide people even further. Jacob, thank you very much for this time.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
All right. So the question is right now, are we infringing on rights and freedoms? This is a really interesting conversation, and I hope you have this in your household as well. Trevor Farrow is a law professor at Toronto's Osgoode Hall Law School, and he joins me now. Hello, Professor. Do you think that there is a case to be made for those objecting?
I think the critical thing here is that people are objecting to is the mandatory nature of it and the new nature of it in the context of a vaccine that is relatively new. So put even that aside, now the question in some jurisdictions are, can we force people to become vaccinated? And in this case, can we fine people if they don't? And I think that raises the stakes. And I think it pulls on our heartstrings a bit, right? The vast majority of people who are being vaccinated want everyone to be there, and they don't understand why people aren't. And there's good reasons for that. People want to move on with our lives. Having said that, when we start to force people to do stuff in ways that are punitive, that's when we start to get to the limits of where we've been before, and I think we need to be cautious going down that road.
And this is the ultimate interference in my personal space. You're literally taking a needle and injecting something into me and telling me I have to do that. Now, I'm all for vaccines. I'm not for that.
Yeah, and so and where we've gone so far, and I think people generally have signed up for this, is if you choose not to get vaccine, then your liberties are limited, meaning you can't go into certain places, you can't get on certain flights or trains or whatever it is. The challenge when you start to fine people is that's one thing if society's neutral, but we know that it's not, right? Lots of people have lots of money and lots of people don't. And so what are we going to start fining people who don't have money? What are we going to do about people who can't afford to get there? What are we going to do about people who have been marginalized from the healthcare system and are concerned about vaccines? There's all sorts of, cautionary issues that we need to be thinking about before we go down this road.
And include in that people who are genuinely afraid and scared. What are we doing to them by forcing them to get this vaccine?
Yeah, I think and there are still, people lump the world into either vaccinated or anti-vaxxers, and I think, as someone who is, speaking for myself, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm vaccinated. I think it's a good idea for people to get vaccinated, but I think those who don't fall into a number of different camps, and they're not all the kind of nutty folks that we see on the TV. There are those folks, but there are also people who are legitimately scared, with legitimate healthcare issues, and I think we need to look around that issue before we sort of with a blunt instrument go in and start fining people with very, very limited exceptions. I think that's a different kind of conversation that we need to be ready for if we're going to go down that road.
Well, we have provided a lot of new fodder, I guess, for any of your classes.
I'm glad you're asking the questions. Thanks for talking to me about it. I'm glad your listeners are thinking about it.